This is video file 6 for Caroline Byrne. So I'm just going to briefly mention the boundary wall. In the grand scheme of things, I suppose it's probably not that important because it's in a rural area. But notice that large sections of the boundary wall they're collapsing. The stone walls are not in great condition and they need to be rebuilt. They're dry stone walls, so they'd be prone to collapsing. It hasn't been maintained now, but it's probably not crucial if they were left in the condition they were in. I don't think that's going to matter. I just said I'd take a proper photograph of the fireplace, just to have it included in the report. This is the large fireplace in the living room area, an open fire, and this is one of two open fireplaces. There's another open fireplace upstairs. It's on the other side of the wall. So this is that's the open fire. This is in the west bedroom on the first floor. That's the other fireplace, a much smaller fireplace. Okay, so that's the main dwelling. Now, I also just briefly want to talk about the sheds, because I know you had mentioned like possibly refurbing them at a later date. So there's effectively two sheds, so you can kind of see there's two different roofs. This shed here actually has a sheet metal roof on it, and over here this roof actually has corrugated cement sheets. And these corrugated cement sheets will actually have asbestos in them, so you're going to have to get fully qualified professionals to come in and remove them, because there is a safety hazard with asbestos sheets. If they're as long as they're not disturbed and they're in good condition, there's no hazard really. But when you start renovating, you're going to have to remove them, and it's the dust that's generated by removing these, if the sheets, because they're quite brittle, if they break, that dust generated and you're breathing it in, that's hazardous to health, it's carcinogenic. So you will really get a specialist to come in and remove them, to make sure that when they remove the sheets, they remove them in full sheets, they don't break them, they don't generate dust, and they do it correctly. If I just so this is a closer up view here. You can see here that there's the sheet roof, there's the asbestos cement sheet roof. So there'll be a slightly higher cost there to get these asbestos cement sheets removed, and to take them to a properly licensed landfill, because you have to you can't just send them to an ordinary landfill, you have to take them to a licensed landfill. Now, and they'd be quite common to have these old asbestos. So if you were to go and look at another property with some sheds, there's a 20% chance, 10%, 20% chance you might find that they've got an asbestos roof on them as well, and you have to spend a bit of money to get rid of it. Now, you can't see it very well in this photograph, but I'll discuss it going further on. There'll be better photographs. But so there's stone structures. This stone structure here is actually just whitewashed. So there's no render on it, it's just a whitewash. This stone structure here, they appear to have been built at different times, because some of them are better than other, there's they are different construction. This one here actually has a lime render on it, which is really what these stone buildings were designed to have, a lime render, because a lime render will breathe. You can always tell a lime render because it's got a more mottled appearance, where over time, over years, you have the passage of water and air through it, gives it that kind of more open textured appearance. So if I move on to the next page now, this is so there's heavy overgrowth of shrubbery around the buildings, which limited the amount of inspection I could do. This is the south gable elevation, and you can see here that the roof here has collapsed over a section of this south shed. So the roofs, I mean, obviously the roofs need to be replaced anyway, so it's not a big deal. Now, if I move on to, so this is the, like, two sheds. This is the northmost shed, and you can see there the asbestos roof that needs to be replaced. This is a view from the other side, and again, it's asbestos back here. So the whole roof area, the whole roof is asbestos that needs to be removed. That's a view from inside, showing the corrugated cement sheet asbestos roof, and the timbers are fairly minimal. So I suppose if you're going to do anything with this, you would really be putting a whole new roof on, new timbers, new everything. Now, I should say, in general, the walls of both structures are plumb vertical, they're in good condition, and, you know, they could be used for renovation. The one problem here, particularly with this north shed, is that the lintels, the doors and lintels are, you know, this one over the door, over the large door, has cracked and failed, and the door itself appears to be helping support this. So the lintels over this door and over the windows would need to be repaired. Now there's quite a bit more work to be done on the stonework than there would be on the other dwelling. But again, you know, they could be they can be retained. So this is at the west side of the north dwelling. You can see that there's effectively no lintels here. I mean, the window frame is being used to support the roof, which is not good. So you would need to install lintels over all of the windows and doors on this north shed. So if we have a look at the south shed, you can see here that the lintels over the door and over the window, they can be retained. They're a little bit more substantial. They've got good brick lintels over them, so they're probably fine to keep. You can see here that the stone is just whitewashed. That's a whitewashing there. It's not in great condition now. It needs to be redone, but that's a whitewashing there, and there's no render on it. So again, that's a close-up view of the lintel over the window, which could be retained. Internally, you know, there's no cracking or any kind of deterioration obvious on the window, so it's probably fine. Now, this is a view of the west elevation of the south shed. Now, and you can see here that there's no render on it, but as well as that, you can see that this wall is, you know, the pointing or the mortar between the bricks has deteriorated, or it's kind of fallen away over the years. There's large areas where the pointing needs to be redone, and that would need to be redone basically to stop rainwater penetration and ingress, but also it needs to be redone to give the walls support and stability, because it'll be prone to movement. You know, if that was allowed to deteriorate and get worse, the wall might start bowing, or there might be a kind of you know, some sort of movement in the wall if the pointing wasn't repaired. So there's sections of this, let's say of this wall in particular. This is the south shed, and it's the west facing wall, and also the south facing gable wall needs to be, a lot of it needs to be repointed to stop rainwater penetration and to stop entry. So there's a bit of work to be done on the walls in order to retain them. This adjacent one here, again, you can see that is actually a lime render on the north shed. So this is a view showing the gable wall. You can see, particularly up on this higher portion, a lot of the needs to be repointed. A lot of the brick or the stone needs to be repointed with a lime render to stabilize it and to stop any penetration. The front facade looks in better condition, and it's got a lime wash on it. That's a closer view of the lime wash there. So now there is, let's say this is the north shed, and this is the north wall, the north gable wall of the north shed. You can see that's the lime render. It's got a kind of a mottled appearance because, as I say, it breathes. So it allows amounts of air and water to come through, and it breathes more than a cement render, so it ends up looking like this. There are cracks here in the north elevation, but I'm not overly worried about them. There's another view on the next page. These cracks here, it's possible there was a doorway here at some stage, but again, I would just be repointing these cracks so that rainwater can't penetrate. And the wall itself is in good condition. It's plumb and it's sound, and it can be retained, but just needs repointing. Internally, it looks fine. You can't actually see any problems internally. It looks like there's a cement render or a cement plaster put on the internal face, but there's no cracking or deterioration visible. This again is the south shed. So this is the south shed, and again, this is the area where the roof sheets are missing. And you can see here, because the roof sheets are missing, the wall here has become, it's frequently saturated in this area, and you can see the green algae growth. And I did notice in this area that some of the mortar pointing, the lime pointing, is quite soft and easy to scrape out. So in this particular area, that lime render needs to be repaired. So what you would do is you would rake out the existing lime render in small sections and replace it with a new lime render to strengthen it up. But again, all the walls were plumb and vertical and could be retained. There's a bit more work to be done to make this building habitable, but it could be retained. That's pretty much the end of the report here. If you go through Appendix A, it discusses in detail the reasons behind providing French drain around, or providing a land drain around a structure to get rid of the rising damp, and the benefits of replacing the cement render with a lime render. There's good information in there. So that's it. If you have any questions on any of this, you can give me a ring and I can go through it with you in more detail if you want. And otherwise, the best of luck. Okay.